Hello everybody and welcome to episode 2 of This Ain't Fake. My name is Neil Marshall. My name is Neil Marshall and of course I'm joined by Ken. Hi Kenny.
Mr. Marshall, how are you?
I'm great. So I just wanted to start off the show by talking about these little gimmicks we have. Anybody who saw the photos of our first recording would have seen we had a Gorilla Monsoon and Steve Gerrard figure. And every week I'm going to add a new gimmick to the table. And this week, how apt.
Every week, Neil.
Yeah, and this week, who do we have but the man called Sting. So what do you think of that?
I think that's fantastic, Neil.
Yeah, so Sting and Stevie and
incidentally,
Gorilla.
we need to make sure we get a picture posted of this on our site, and maybe when we do up a Facebook and Twitter as well. This figure was one of my favourite figures when I was a kid. The WCW figures in there.
Oh,
their limbs. Look at all this movement you got.
Dexterity.
Here. Awful radio, by the way, but still terrific figures.
Late 90s.
Put a video of this up on YouTube.
But do you remember some of the WCW ones were really bad? Like I remember they were, they were a lot more flexible than the WF ones. But then there was like DDP constantly had his hands in the bang position.
Yes.
So if you if you put his hands by his side, it looked like he was doing a little bit of a ballerina step, if you would.
I do recall that. Yeah, I'm just going to do some.
You're going to take a picture while we're on the air.
Captures here. Look at this. Got ankle movements.
Okay, well,
Ken does that. The show, yeah,
I will indeed. Well, Ken does that. We're going to go over a lot on today's show. We've got all the news from the past week. Then we're going to be recapping last night's Monday Night Raw. Talk about podcasts, do our usual podcast roundup. We'll get a catch your name for that segment as it comes along.
Neil, just let the listener know I'm now doing the dramatic turn that Sting did. On Monday Night Raw to give a spoiler. Oh yeah, look at that. Pop, Neil, pop.
No, that was perfect. I just
pop. We need to pop.
Actually, at that point when he turned around, they stopped popping. But we'll talk about that for a second, or in a second. And then obviously we're going to go over the Great American Bash review part 2. Great American Bash 91, the second installment of that dreadful show. So first off, Ken, let's go over some of the news this week. CM Punk had a tweet that had people going ballistic. He said, "I'm starting a band or a podcast or a fire. Well, at least one of these three. So what's the most likely thing?" And then he joked that he was actually like it's one of the main two. So what is it? Is it a band or is it a podcast?
I hope a band, because he's an awful curmudgeonly motherfucker, and I don't know if I could listen to him. Because I feel like he's either gonna be burying wrestling for 90 minutes a week, which I mean that's what I'm here for, or he will just not talk about wrestling at all. Which I think is probably more likely that he just won't address wrestling.
I bet you he will. I bet you a man who is so opinionated as him has been
but
dying.
Do you think he watches Raw? I don't think he does.
I don't think it's about that. I think the fact that his contract is now up. He's not a part of the company anymore. Now he wants to do something else, and he'll be able to talk about what he wants. Either way, if he does do it, and it's a podcast, it'll be the biggest first listen to podcast since ours last week.
But would you agree with me that a weekly CM Punk podcast, discussing Raw or whatever?
I doubt it will be.
Yeah, I just don't think that would be good.
It's going to be interesting to see what he does. He did do backing vocals for a punk gentleman, as they're commonly referred to. So
I personally would like it if CM Punk just disappeared for 3 years. You know what I mean? I'm a huge Punk mark, but he, I felt he was beyond stale by the time he left. I felt like his cynicism,
he looked beat up as well. He looked absolutely fucked. Like
it was time for him.
Speaking of being fucked, unfortunately, it looks like if Daniel Bryan is to have a second neck surgery, it will be accompanied by a shoulder surgery as well. Reported the Observer, then the Bleacher Report did an article on the link between shoulder surgeries and neck surgeries, and we could be looking at like the Rumble at the earliest. I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that this has really been the nail in the coffin for Daniel Bryan. Obviously, he'll come back and he'll get to a certain level because he's very talented and he's good on the mic and he's great in the ring. But I feel like they didn't really want to put him where he was when he left. They were doing that thing that they did with Rey Mysterio, where they were booking him to fail before he left. This, Vince's whole thing of you can be sick at work as quickly as you can be sick at home. He doesn't like guys who show weakness. We've seen guys like Dolph Ziggler and Fandango have injury issues, legitimate problems, and then they come back and they never get any traction again. I mean, Ziggler had the title taken off and Fandango didn't get his Intercontinental title run. So I think he'll really look at this as a black mark on Daniel Bryan, and his talent will always keep him to a certain level. But they did look like they were going to give him maybe a 6-month period to kind of half build the company around him. And
I think that was definitely the idea. I don't know if we'll see it again, so I agree with you in that respect.
He's spot now, doesn't he?
Here's my worry. Well, it's not my worry because I actually think it would be kind of like, I would love if this happened personally, and this is nothing against Roman Reigns. It's actually nothing against anybody. It's because how much I love Daniel Bryan and how sad I am at the way it's all panned out. If he comes back around Rumble time, and they're going with the idea of this Rumble being for Reigns what 30 was for Bryan, I can seriously see the fans turning and making it about Bryan again.
I don't think so, only because I really did feel and do feel he's been damaged by the booking. The booking in the lead up to the injury and the booking since the injury, I think, have very, very much weakened him. And I do not believe that unless they shit the bed with Reigns, I don't believe he's in any serious danger of having a backlash like Batista did, and I think that he'll be okay.
And Kenta, they announced Kenta when they were over in Japan this week. They had Hogan and Jimmy Hart there to do the unveiling. They haven't done this since Mystico.
That in itself is a story. Hogan and Jimmy Hart introducing Kenta.
Jimmy carrying Hogan's bag.
It just doesn't fit in your brain,
It was a really big deal, Hogan coming back to Japan with WWE, supposedly. They'd sellouts in buildings they haven't sold out in years.
Yeah.
Just because the Huckster was going to limp down there and introduce somebody they already knew.
There you go, yeah.
And finally, in a...
Did you see the Hogan, the Hulkamania Japan t-shirt they released?
Explain, I might have. What was it?
It's kind of like a mock-up of a Japanese flag with Hogan on it, and I'll keep going.
Okay, well, the last bit of news I want to talk about before Monday Night Raw was the Natalya Neidhart story. You heard about this?
I did.
If this didn't get enough, we'll try and find one of these a week, folks. One that didn't get enough press as it should have. So she was being sued by...
I mean, we should clarify that probably the reason it didn't get any press is because it's ludicrous and ridiculous.
Well, somebody from Las Vegas was thrown out of court, claiming that Natalya was basically over the last few years like doing very foul, lascivious acts upon them as a dominatrix, among other things. That's a magnificent t-shirt. Google Hulk Hogan Japan 2014 t-shirt.
Yeah, very good.
That's how you use Google.
www.shop.com.
That's incredible. But yeah, what do you think of Natalya? Yeah,
it's very strange. It just sounded like someone who was fixated on her and decided to claim that she had been, dominating him, as it were, and that she would visit him while on the road and do X, Y, and Z to him. But they just threw it out because obviously she travels with her husband, so it just wasn't true. Also, a story I think that was important this week was, did you hear about the closing of Power Slam magazine?
Oh, you know what? I can't believe I didn't write this down. I saw it yesterday.
I have a story about this.
This is so sad.
Did I tell you the story a few years ago?
Go for it anyway.
Okay, I definitely didn't tell the people. Okay. As you're probably aware, well, if you read the magazine, you're certainly aware, Finn Martin, I mean, he was a very, very cynical writer. He was cynical from sort of the mid-90s onward, but he got increasingly kind of cynical and bitter and really didn't like pro wrestling a great deal the last few years, it seemed. But his biggest kind of issue was John Cena. He just did not like John Cena. And
that's right.
He would not let John Cena be in his PS50 every year.
That's it, yeah.
And he would write, he would bury him, for lack of a better term, and I always thought this was very stupid because each month, Cena's pay-per-view main events against the likes of Edge, Batista, Umaga, all these kinds of people would get like really strong reviews. But then at the end of the year, when it came time to give people their credit, because Cena couldn't throw a decent punch, he would never be included. So one year, it was 5 years ago, I wrote a letter into the letters page, basically expressing my opinion that Cena deserved to be there, and I used the examples of some of the really good matches that Finn had reviewed, and getting positive reviews to. And it was just for the letters page of the magazine, Mm-hmm. And I got a personal email back from Finn Martin, very, very much speaking down to me about how silly my opinion was, okay?
Oh, wow.
And it was very dismissive. And
you don't have it with you, do you?
No, I searched and it was actually on an old work account, so... So I replied to him, and I didn't kind of sync to that kind of tone, because he was very, speaking down to me. So I tried to, initiate, a real debate. So I said, look, here's my point, further to what I said in my previous email, look at Lashley, Umaga, or Kali. He had the best matches of their careers. Remember that match he had with Lashley on
the Great American Bash?
Yeah, he had some real good matches. And
same with Kali, the one night stand match.
Yeah, and
as you said,
responded, and he was really aggressive and just like, you're an idiot, for lack of a better term. So I just read this, and I read it 3 or 4 times. Like, is this guy for real? You know what I mean? I was just like, here I am, one of his readers expressing an opinion, and he's basically calling me an idiot. So I again tried not to react. I tried to respond rather than react. I gave it half an hour, and I sent him an email back expressing my disbelief that he would speak to one of his readers in this fashion, and reminded him that without his readers he wouldn't have a job. And I said, and I'm not going to buy your magazine anymore, because I'd been sick for years, but I've been reading it because I've been reading for 2 decades. You know?
It was very much a habitual thing.
Yes,
and I was the same with Power Slam. I fucking loved it. It was it was just there was a transition about 1996, 97 for me when I switched from WWF magazine to Power Slam. Loved it. And it
was like being a member of a secret club, you know what I mean? Because you got the info that other people didn't have.
Seen all the photos of like stuff from Japan and blood and guts and stuff. It was so you really did feel like you were reading something like, you know, that was kind of so special and secretive.
And with the freedom of information today, you don't get that anymore. But so I did stop reading it, and I just kind of found it really prophetic today that you know, it is out of business. And I just from reading several message boards, seems that the kind of story of people getting sick of Finn Martin's cynicism and stopping reading his magazine was very widespread, and that's probably why it's out of business today.
Towards the end of the run, did they have... I know, like, the thing is as well, by the time it's published, they're usually 2 weeks behind, the front page.
The 13th of the month was always when they would go to press.
Okay, so we're 2 weeks behind what the front page of the website on the day of release would say.
Yeah.
Okay. Did they have different sources to people like the Torch and the Observer?
You would see very occasionally.
I do remember seeing this and speaking to you about it.
You would see very occasionally different things in there that you didn't see in the Observer or whatever. But over time, they became less and less, and I think there was just nothing to it anymore. You know.
Yeah.
It just evolved. It still looked like the exact same magazine as it did 2 decades ago.
No, I agree with that. I guess it is sad though in a different perspective. Obviously, a personal issue that you had, notwithstanding.
You know, it was a thing from my childhood, and I used to keep every issue. I had like 300 issues at one point.
Yeah, no, a lot of people are definitely shedding a tear and you know, giving their testimony about how big the magazine was for them, expanding their knowledge about wrestling, especially if you're from the UK and Ireland. But just on a brief note, you were saying about the Cena thing and how he, you know, if Hogan, if people who knew the score, right, were as abundant and had the information as easily and could express their opinion as easily, Hogan would not be remembered in the way he was. It would be very Cena-esque in my opinion, I swear, because you read back at old testimony from people who were inside at the time, and the only reason he wasn't getting booed really in the arenas for the first 7 years of his run is because the majority of people weren't reading.
Yeah, I think so, but it's also a different society as well. Then,
Well, you need to know what to look for if you're going to talk about somebody throwing bad punches. Not to say that Hogan's punches aren't as bad as Cena's, but there's moments. Like, I've been watching some of the Saturday night main events. I guess we'll save that for a review show.
Yes.
Let's talk about Monday Night Raw. It took place from Richmond, Virginia.
Just so the people know, I have a timer here. Last week we spent almost 50 minutes talking about Monday Night Raw, which is approximately half as long as the show is about commercials. So we promise we won't do that to you again this week, okay?
That's a really good point.
I know you might not have 90 minutes of your time.
Not only that, but we would really like to thank, and this isn't helping me because this is adding to the time, and I'm the one who's fighting for it. But we would like to thank everybody who listened to show one, not only for listening, but the feedback we got. It was really positive. I couldn't be happy with the feedback. But one of the suggestions was just a more even-rounded number in terms of how long we let the show go. So we are going to try and make the Raw recap a bit more sprightly and sprucey, but we're not going to try and skip over much. It opened up with Cena coming out in the ring. He took a left-footed step towards the ring, and then that was preceded by a right-footed step.
Can I just say something, Neil?
Yes.
Breaking news here. I didn't actually see Monday Night Raw.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I just saw a 3-hour infomercial for the WWE Network. Where did you see Raw? Because
you stepped over my gag with your own gag. I hope you know that.
What?
I was going somewhere with that.
Were you?
Yeah.
I'm really, really sorry.
That's all right. But it was
still ironing out the creases here, folks. But genuinely, that's what the show felt like to me.
And it was. And literally, the first thing that Cena said was, "You need to order the network."
Yeah, that was the first words.
It was like, I don't want to start off on such a bad note, but it was the most desperate I've ever seen them come off.
This company has the habit of, when it's coming off desperate, it's coming off very desperate. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen any of the late 80s No Holds Barred hype. I think there was a Saturday Night's main event around that time.
I think I saw a few of the spots for it.
They're just like, I mean, it's like it's 90 minutes or 2 hours, however long it is, and so much of it is dedicated to No Holds Barred. And they don't understand that there is a point where you cross the line and it's not a push anymore. And you're turning people off. There's the old rule with anybody who's trying to sell anything. You give 80% product and then 20% trying the sales pitch. But here, it just came across quite sadly, and I think it's a story in itself how desperate they are to sell this network. Cena
said that one of the reasons you need to get the network is because he doesn't know if he's going to leave Battleground as champion. This had Reigns come out, and they were talking about last week's segment with the arm raising. Reigns cut Cena off and asked him to get to the point. And Cena said, this is kind of the way they book Reigns. They're protecting him. They're kind of booking him and giving him the dialogue one would if you wanted to be a strong silent type. But yet he does still go a few minutes when he talks. Anyway, Ambrose came on the screen and put the two of them to shame. Just like killed the two of them in terms of charisma, delivery, a believable character. Well, look, listen, he still, I thought, outshone them. Before Kane and Orton and Rollins attacked him backstage, it's a pretty long backstage beating.
Cena and Reigns meanwhile thrilled their thumbs.
Yeah, absolutely. They were let me get to that. They were throwing him against the garage, the back of the garage door, and it basically ended with Ambrose leaning up against the box saying, "Is that all you got?" And inevitably he got curb stomped by Rollins from one crate to another, which actually looked really, really good, because as soon as he fell onto his back he had blood on his chin, which looked hard way. It was excellent. But why did Cena and Reigns do nothing?
No idea.
It was really weird, wasn't
it? I keep coming back to I'm watching a lot of 1990s content at the moment, and every little possible loophole is tied up within storylines. And it's funny, last week we were having a discussion about why Seth Rollins turned on Roman Reigns, and you were explaining to me your theory, and I said to you shouldn't have to try and fill in the blanks, and I'm just sitting here, I still don't know why Reigns is in the match.
Yes.
And then I don't know why Reigns and Cena didn't try and...
Even Nitro...
And biggest of all, why are Ambrose and Reigns not friends anymore?
I don't think it's that they're not friends, it's just they're not pals. He did not give a
flying fuck about Ambrose later in the show.
No, I'm not going to say... It was... Look, it's very, very strange indeed. Miz and Sheamus... Miz and Sheamus was the first match, and...
this is good.
Miz now has his face on the screen for the duration of his matches. I don't know how long this is going to last. It's I don't know if I like it or not.
I like this. I think that the Miz, I'm probably on my lonesome here. I think they should use him stronger. I think he's the kind of guy that if you booked him strong like they did in 2010 going into his championship win.
Yeah.
Say if you gave him the Intercontinental Championship and had him hold it for 6 months and very rarely lose.
This isn't happening. I'm
so
sorry.
No, I know, but then
he's better off without the belt.
He's somebody who
with this idea.
He's somebody who genuinely is disliked by the people. There's something about Miz that's just irritating.
But I don't know if it translates into
It's not going to translate into money. My point is, he could be a setup guy so that if you have a babyface like Seth Rollins who's on the way up, he can beat Miz, on his way to the top. Whereas at the moment, they don't really have any setup guys.
I potentially see what you're talking about. For me, I'm over Miz to the point where I don't think you can rehab him personally. But there is still a genuine dislike. There is. I suppose
that all the new heels they're bringing in, they're either grooming for top spots or they're middle of the card geeks. So you have no one to fill. They very rarely have anyone you look at Rusev and he's being built up. All the guys that they have to feed to him are nobodies. And they need guys who are kind of that 7 out of 10 level who can be stepping stones for guys on the way up, like Rob Van Dam would be if he didn't lose every single week.
Well, we talked about Rob Van Dam last week. Yeah. We'll get to him in a moment. These two are both in the Intercontinental Battle Royal, which is we'll talk about later and who we think might win it. But they were clearly making people look strong, even if just for 1 week. And Miz got the nod over Sheamus. Bet him with a roll-up and celebrated like a lunatic.
Yeah.
Sheamus is the least over he has been since he won the championship. As we called it, Ken, do you remember what we called it the night it happened when we were in your house having a few drinks? The night we won the World Cup. Yeah. It was fantastic. Yeah. Backstage we had Orton and Kane. Pretty much the same spiel as last week. Are you going to who's going to come away with the belt? Is Kane on Orton's side? Then we had Trips and Stephanie coming back from vacation. Trips settled tensions between the two before he and Stephanie had a big old schnog.
Yeah.
Now, did Vince write this into the script? Did the writers write this into the script? Or did Trips and Stephanie write this into the script? And inevitably, regardless, was Vince standing behind the camera as they did this? Of course.
Probably, yeah.
Which I just think is incredible.
Yeah.
Think about it, unbelievable. Fandango versus Dolph Ziggler. It's so interesting in a climate where the lines between TV and pay-per-view are getting so blurred, yet they're begging people to buy the network for the idea of monthly pay-per-views. The amount of matches that seem to have a build but are given away on TV and become literal TV feuds but then still feature on the pay-per-view. I just think of all the times for this to be happening, it's so strange.
Yeah,
they don't build. This is where, when we'll talk about Swagger and Rusev later, this is where they got it right. But right here they didn't. They did the finish they've been doing recently with people dancing for distractions. The two women, Summer Rae and Layla, got on the desk. They're now pals. For those of you who say nothing ever happens on SmackDown, you're wrong. This feud continues and progresses on SmackDown. They were dancing. Fandango couldn't believe it. Ziggler got the win. And then they came into the ring, they danced with Ziggler and kind of felt up his bottom a bit, and Ziggler looked kind of surprised.
Yeah.
What did you think of the match?
Was there anything to think? It was, 4 minutes, 5 minutes? It was fine.
Are these guys in the Battle Royal as well?
Yeah, everyone's in the Battle Royal.
Everyone's in. They didn't feature them, though, the way that they didn't cut to the little table with the belt on the outside.
No.
Okay, so next up we had the Usos coming out, and, oh, wait a minute, the Sonic thing. Let's talk about this.
Oh, mostly.
Tell everybody what happened as quick as you possibly can, then.
They just did a little skit backstage where Damien Sandow was dressed up as an employee from Sonic, and him and Adam Rose discussed a hot dog. And this is the second week in a row, I think, that Adam Rose has been doing some sort of product placement skit backstage. I hate this garbage.
Did you want to have a Sonic?
No. And I actually like Sonic.
I like Sonic too. Yeah. I wanted to have a Sonic.
I hate Adam Rose. He's such a go-away hate with me.
Really?
Absolutely detest him.
More so than... But you prefer Sandow?
Yeah, Sandow has plenty of upside, but
yeah.
Rose is just nothing to me.
The Usos coming out. We didn't know who against. They were attacked by the Wyatts. Interesting. I know this has been pointed out elsewhere, so I don't want to try and take credit for it. But it's incredible after having so many matches that the stip match is a match with 3 matches within one match. Yeah.
But I like 2 out of 3 falls. I watched one last night between Ron Simmons and Lex Luger, and it was
What show was that?
That was Halloween Havoc 1991.
Good.
Yeah, believe it or not. And then I went back and checked, and at the time it was given, I think it was 3 3/4 stars. So
Havoc wouldn't be the show after the Bash. Was there something?
It was the pay-per-view after the Bash, yeah.
Well, will we do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I've watched it, so that's fine by me.
Let's just do WCW 91.
I've literally been watching. I watch pay-per-view Bash, and it's just such easy to watch, and it makes Raw so much more frustrating for me.
Even early 90s WCW?
Yeah, because it just makes sense.
I can understand. Well, not everything. I didn't like Great American Bash 91.
You what?
I've got something to reveal that I didn't reveal last week, actually, about Great American Bash 91. That you're going to do. Yeah, I'll come to it later. Okay, so we had top of the air segment, given a lot of time.
This was great.
Did you? I didn't think you liked this.
No, I really enjoyed this.
Oh, I'm so glad. I
enjoyed it specifically because it was like. Okay.
Tell everybody what it was.
Okay, so it was like a debate between.
What did they use, Ken? What word did they use? This was like abeyance. When they just had this word, they usually say vacate, but 1 year when the title was vacated, they said abeyance. And instead of having a debate, they called it a. Do we have it in front of us?
I don't have it in front of me. No, I don't know.
I'll look it up if you want to go through the segment.
So Cole welcomed them all to the ring, and it was Lana and Rusev on one side of the ring with the Belgian flag on a podium, and Coulter and Swagger on the other with the USA flag on it. Lana basically spouted a bunch of anti-American rhetoric, but she cut quite deep, and I mean,
she's incredible.
I haven't been a huge fan of this act in general, but I think she was fantastic.
She's unbelievable, especially the bit at the start when they were doing the USA chants, and she, like, the mic was picking her up, but it clearly wasn't a part of the script. She was just in some sort of Russian dialect, just giving it socks.
Yeah. So then, basically, eventually, Coulter kind of got his comeback on her. I was praying that he wasn't going to use the old classic America, love it or leave it, which they was their go-to in the 90s. It just drove me absolutely crazy. Just no logic to it.
These Vince-isms, like each and every one of you, which has to be the biggest one of all time, but that is another one.
So that Lana put up a photo of Putin on the big screen, and Coulter put up a photo of Obama.
That was very strange.
Yeah, because Vince was sitting backstage going, God damn it.
Really strange. Yeah, like the majority of the... Well, Vince anyway wouldn't be a fan. Obama, yeah. I'm pretty sure Zeb doesn't either, and it's very particular places that you're going to get a 100% pop for him.
He didn't really get 100% pop, but I think.
Now, what was the point? They said Putin is ugly, and then they put Obama on. They didn't say he's got a very nice smile.
They didn't say look at Chris Smalling, So anyway, Coulter led the people in the "We the People" chant, which. Got a gigantic pop. I wish they had showed the people because they just showed Swagger and Coulter, but you could hear the volume of it.
Well, before that, Lana smacked
no,
Zeb.
That was afterward.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Excuse me.
That's why she smacked him.
Very good.
And then a brawl broke out, and it looked like Rusev was going to get the better of it, but he went for his big kick, and Swagger caught it, got the ankle lock. Rusev scurried, and we have a build for a match, and
match I'm most excited about it. Just
yeah,
from a
you know
build.
what, I think that they have something here where obviously there was no plans for this to get over big, and I feel like the idea is to have Rusev go with Cena at some point. But I think what you could even do with this is you could have Rusev eke out a win, maybe cheat on Sunday, but keep the feud alive. I think you could do a flag match at SummerSlam.
Good man.
Gimmick they haven't done in a long time. You could have Swagger win that because it's not a
pin.
pinfall.
Yeah, really
and
clever.
Then keep it going until Night of Champions, and I mean,
and it's the blow off, and it's the first pay per view.
Yeah.
It's the first pay per view with the
recycle,
recycle,
and then hopefully Cena's free by then.
It's fucking perfect. Just as you said, it's perfect because Rusev is getting very close. Especially if this is a 1 month feud, Rusev is getting very, very close to the point where he's going to lose because he's not getting the belt. Yeah. And he's not going to be contending for the belt at WrestleMania. Yeah. So if you can actually do a 3 month feud, like if I said to you a year ago.
Yeah, I know.
When he was in developmental, imagine when we've got Reigns, Rollins, Ambrose, all the singles, and we've got Cena and Orton, and we've got RVD and Jericho and Bray Wyatt all in the mix. That this Swagger and Rusev feud as Swagger's a babyface. It just happens. It shows what happens when they don't just have silly matches in between shows, and they actually build up one match by itself with limited physical contact, and it's actually doable if you're creative.
Such basic professional wrestling.
Speaking of non-basic professional wrestling, Cena and Reigns were backstage next talking about what happened to Ambrose, because of course when they watched it together in the ring, they just decided not to talk about it. Ridiculous. Actually it was very strange, just that segment, just the way Reigns got the last word and walked out. They very rarely make Cena second fiddle to anybody, but this show was all about Reigns being the main man.
It was.
Flo Rida is going to perform on Raw next week. Let's talk about the time that you and I saw Flo Rida at WrestleMania 28. Wasn't he great?
I think he was, yeah.
He actually was pretty good.
I remember, I think I have more vivid memories of MGK. Because he got booed out of the building.
Oh yeah, that's right. So Flo Rida did Rock and MGK did Cena.
Yeah, that was it.
Because they wanted to keep the ethnicities on different sides. Clever. We had RVD versus Alberto.
I didn't realise that, yeah.
We had RVD against Alberto Del Rio in a situation where RVD has been part-time for about a year now, and he's been gone for 4 months out of the year, but this literally feels like the 20th time I've seen this match.
Yeah, and they just keep every single week Van Damme loses on television, and you lose what you have. They bring back guys like Van Damme because they want star power for the house shows and guys to build their newer stars. Okay, it's been established that Del Rio is slotted in his spot in the card. He's not going any higher. We know he's planning on retiring in the not too distant future. Why do you need to be the babyface here?
Absolutely. RVD got really small amounts of offense in as well.
Yeah.
So we had a clean armbar
finish,
by Alberto for the finish. So him and Miz got put over pretty big for the Battle Royal. Do you see either one of them taking the belt on Sunday?
If I talked earlier on about Miz winning the championship. If I had my druthers, that spot actually would go to Del Rio, and Del Rio would hold it for a long period of time. I think he is your perfect
mid-card
Intercontinental champion.
I completely agree, and I only thought about this.
Add value to the belt as well.
I swear, I only thought about this when after the RVD match, I said to myself, Del Rio was very unpalatable with the push he got in 2011, 2012. And the idea of him being a Don Morocco or a kind of not a Mr. Perfect level, but just
almost,
of a gatekeeper before the main event.
Yeah, I'm fine with that, yeah.
This was one of the most fascinating vignettes on the show, but somehow not the most fascinating. They aired an advertisement for the network that was based around the CM Punk documentary Best in the World that came out 2 years ago. It was incredibly, I think it was fucking amazingly clever. They never had the announcer say CM Punk. Now, he's still we shall not talk about. But yet, they aired the whole documentary, and obviously the documentary makes him and his story look incredible. I think it's so clever, because you've got CM Punk for the first time back on WWE television, and when people say to their friends, what was that CM Punk thing about on Raw? They'll say, it was something on the
network, yeah.
Perfect. I thought it was ingenious. Next up we had Nikki Bella come out. They're continuing the feud between Brie and Stephanie, using Nikki as the catalyst before Brie comes back. Obviously, that might be up for, might be in
Nikki
jeopardy.
Bella is to Brie Bella what Paul Heyman is to Brock Lesnar. Man, that's downgrade right there.
You're absolutely right. This is interesting now, because I presume the idea was to have Bryan back by SummerSlam, and it would make sense to have Nikki back. But now,
the talk is that it's Brie against
Stephanie. Well, Brie's going to have to come back before Bryan. I'm pretty sure that's not the way it plays. Anyway, the usual stuff with Stephanie blaming Brie for abandoning Nikki, and of course, because all tag matches are signed 3 months in advance,
yes,
her hands were tied, and Nikki had to go against the new tag team of. So hold on, if this was signed in advance, it was against a tag team that were appearing for the first time. Incredible. Yeah. So Cameron and Alicia, and they obviously bet Nikki, and so that feud continues. Next was the best thing ever.
Yeah.
It got out a few weeks ago that there was a casting call out for basically a Sting body double, and they released a full detail thing about what the ad was going to be. The ad was going to be some sort of orchestra setup with people playing. And again, the Wrestling Observer reported that this was not being made by WWE.
Yeah, but then he seemed to almost contradict himself on their podcast last night, saying this cost them $200,000, and pondering if they were using the footage for anything else, which they can't if it's...
No, I think it was 2K. I think it is 2K that spent the money.
Well, regardless, it was a bunch of it was an orchestra in a warehouse playing the old Sting theme, with kind of silhouettes of Sting in the rafters and stuff, and eventually it showed Sting. And I thought what would be really cool is if it seems like Sting's coming in. Very unusual for them. They showed this commercial and the crowd mic'd. Normally when they show a commercial, they do not mic the crowd. Because
the last 2 years there's been a precedent for this. Lesnar in the video game, Lesnar back before next year's WrestleMania, or back by time next year. The exact same thing with Warrior.
Yeah.
So here we are again with Sting. But I never thought about that with the crowd miking. That's an incredibly interesting point.
Yes, because normally they would just play the video. One thing, it gave me a fantasy booking scenario, if you can indulge me for a second here. I think because it's a weird time of year for Sting to be debuting, I would have a bunch of vignettes for him, and then him come out and cut a promo. He's good promo these days.
Absolutely.
Basically saying that he wants one more match, but that he doesn't. He wants to find an opponent. He doesn't know who his opponent is. If there's someone worthy, or if there's somebody that he wants to face, then for the next 6 months he just hangs up in the rafters. We see him time to time watching matches, and when the time is right, he's going to pick his opponent, which will be, of course, for WrestleMania.
That's great.
Because I think it's important to build to play off that stuff, because
it's what got him over in the first place, being a brooding character in the background. And there's fucking 14 years elapsed since people have seen him on TV, and there's a lot of younger fans that need to be introduced to him.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Here's something I thought of. Do you think there's any chance they're going to have him rappel from the rafters?
No.
You think so?
No.
Okay. Moving on.
Yeah, his age it might be a factor as well, but there's the obvious reason.
Yeah.
Randy no likey Kane. He's complained to Hunter backstage. He doesn't think Kane is going to do what Kane did for Randy Money in the Bank. Hunter says he'll resolve it. Goldust and Cody backstage doing what they do most weeks, which isn't wrestle, and which is try and out-weird each other.
Yeah, and teams for them to wrestle anyway. So.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because I love them dearly, and I think Cody would be mega over if he was like wrestling every week, but also getting tiny bit of promo time.
I just think they need teams, because at the moment I just don't think there's anything in them wrestling Ryback. So
potential new team could be Big E and Kofi, who were buddy this week after Big E made the save for Kofi against Cesaro.
That's the team I would put together, Kofi and Big E.
Absolutely. Do you remember when they were thinking of doing Big E and Henry at WrestleMania, and they had them tagging at the start of the year before Henry got re-injured?
Yeah.
I love that team.
Yeah.
By the way, we had Cesaro against Big E with Kofi in Big E's corner, and no Heyman. They did this weird thing where they teased the idea. Well, two of them had teased the idea of him being fired before Cole said, "This is ridiculous." I actually don't know what they were trying to do. They've never done this kind of thing to create buzz for something that happens only half an hour later, with only using the commentators. It's a very weird way of doing it, but it did create buzz, because I went on the internet during the ad breaks and people were freaking out. So it worked.
I don't really know this, but I do know that PW Insider has reported today that they're taking Heyman away from Cesaro altogether.
Oh. Well, we'll get to that in a minute, but Cesaro was here on his own. It was actually a distraction finish. The babyface is in cahoots to cause a distraction against Cesaro.
Because since WrestleMania, his stock has just fallen and fallen and fallen.
Well, obviously, there was a plan for him to win Money in the Bank. That was given to Seth. And then we heard a few weeks ago the plan was to give him the Intercontinental title. And not that that's actually going to do him any favours, but I don't see this happening now either.
No, he's too cold for me.
He's in trouble. He's absolutely in trouble. I was going to call you Guy. He's in trouble, Guy.
This next segment, Chris Jericho came into the ring. He cut a decent promo, I thought.
Better than he has since come back.
Yeah, I mean,
he said weird things, Ken.
He had better material. He did say some funny things. He mentioned he was the first undisputed champion, which is against what they've been telling people since December. He mentioned kind of all sorts of weird and wacky storylines, but it was a decent little promo.
The Taker thing got me. He mentioned the Taker and the Pyro, which anybody who listened to his podcast, he actually brings that story up more than you think. But that was just something that I felt that the top brass might have kind of not been angry about, but scratched their head and said, "Why?
Yeah,
why do you need to talk about the most protected character ever getting burnt by Pyro in an accident?"
I don't know, but he did this perfectly decent promo, and then Waylon Mercy appeared on the Titan.
You have to stop that now.
Bray Wyatt, as some like to call him, and just cut another one of his garbage promos that he delivers well. He's like Roddy Piper was in the 90s now. He speaks this verbiage that just make... No, Piper in the 80s was a money promo. In the 90s...
Oh, I don't know.
He was in the 90s, he was very self-indulgent. And
well, WCW in the 90s, I'll give you that.
Yeah,
Late 90s is amazing.
Wyatt just talked, and as you know, this has been going way over my head for a long, long period of time. He's go away heat with me, and for the first time, people agreed with me.
Yeah.
They were boring chants. No one wanted to see this. Eventually the Wyatts came out and Jericho escaped, and then as he was backing up the ramp, Bray attacked him with a clothesline to the back of the head. This is a serviceable build-up for the pay-per-view, I suppose. Yeah,
it was kind of strange. The announcers really telegraphed the idea that Wyatt was going to get Jericho from behind while Jericho was backing up the ramp away from Harper and Rowan. The announcers were literally saying, "Watch your back, watch your back, watch your back." Also, for those of you wondering about the shiner that Wyatt had on it, that Bray Wyatt had in his eye, that was from Ric Flair at the Madison Square Garden house show. He got too excited.
Yeah,
as he
there
does.
You go.
We'll talk about Flair getting excited in a minute. AJ Lee versus... When you do this, I can't do this.
AJ Lee versus Eva
Ray?
I just can't do it. Okay,
it's really weird, and I don't care.
Yeah, you're talking about Raw for me. AJ beat Eva Marie by submission in about 90 seconds, 2 minutes. Paige was on commentary doing her kind of weird, awkward frenemy banter with...
I thought she was better than weeks past.
She was, but...
Good.
She called AJ her frenemy, and this fairly common term had to be explained that it meant friend and enemy. And then AJ came over after her win, and it's one of those things where they're supposed to be being super duper fake, that they secretly hate each other. I just don't see how this makes either of them likable. It's just terrible television.
It's very patchy.
Bo Dallas came out and had a match with the Great Khali. He kind of cut a promo about El Torito first, and he won. He hit his Bodog on the outside on the Great Khali and got a count out victory. He tried to go over to him and do his usual inspirational promo thereafter, but in a fairly telegraphed spot, Khali gave him the big Khali chop to the chest, and
he sold it, mate. It's chop to the head.
Yeah, sorry.
He sold it incredibly. He did the whole googly eyes. He did a big loud ow.
Yeah.
And it was good stuff. Like, what else do you want to do with Bo? I'm fine with this.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't offensive. It did nothing. It's Seth and Hunter backstage. We actually went over a segment. We skipped Kane talking to Hunter backstage about Orton and who to trust. Hunter's basically playing favourites whoever he's talking to at that time. Seth came back and they talked about a plan B.
Yeah.
So plan B is clearly if Orton and Kane don't get the job done, that the Money in the Bank briefcase will be used as a plan B. And then Heyman appears.
Yes.
And we get the very first tease of the known main event for SummerSlam, which will be Cena and Brock. With Heyman saying he's got a plan, see if they need it, and then being
this
very
doesn't make
sheepish.
sense to me, because only a couple of months ago when Bryan held the title, the authority seemed to think it would be fine for Cena to be champion. And there's no real reason within storyline that it wouldn't be fine for him to be champion. I mean...
Well, not only that, but leading into WrestleMania, Heyman and Brock were running around like Egypt's asking for a title shot, and they were being listened to.
Yeah, so more garbage here. Ric Flair came out and he...
Can I talk about this?
Yeah, go for it.
He
we're nearly at the half-hour mark here in Raw.
I think we're doing pretty good. He looked incredible.
He did look well.
He looked so good. He's lost...
Spending Lanzarote.
He's dropped... Oh dear, he dropped quite a bit of weight.
Yeah, he looks in really good shape, I'd say.
Yeah, he definitely, like his face, man, you could really tell. Yeah, without those jowls, I'm not going to say he looks like pre-2003 Ric Flair, but like he looks like Ric Flair more so. It's just a pity about his Gruick, but then again, he's a very old man.
65 now?
Yep, he got in the ring with Renee, and he proceeded to just be smitten with her. He was talking in a very long, drawn-out way. It was as if he
say
was...
anything.
No, it was clear that obviously they had released there had been, it's incredible. You should take a picture of that. Okay. They had rumours circulating about him being Mrs. Manager, and people were very upset with that idea. I was kind of one of them, but obviously Miz has come back with his own new character, and Flair's been brought back to TV, but they clearly don't have an idea what to do with him. He basically said that he had I would love to put him with Ziggler. He said that he's had a lot of great times in Richmond. He said that he's very good at having sex in no uncertain terms. And then he said that after being asked by Renee eventually who he thought would win the 4-way battleground, he went through everybody, did a little catchphrase for them all, and then said his main man, John Cena, or as he pronounced it, Joan Cena. Yeah. And then we had a tease with Reigns come out as if to be a little upset with Flair not picking him. Shook Flair's hand, Flair left. Then Cena came out, and Cena gave Flair the World Heavyweight Championship, and then told Flair to keep it.
Yeah, this was just absolutely ridiculous. So
this is Cena taking advantage.
Neil is referring to the fact that Cena had two belts, the big gold belt and the WWE Championship. It always seemed likely that they were going to get rid of one, and they couldn't get a new championship because they just debuted the WWE Championship belt last year.
Well, they like having two belts to sell as well.
Exactly. He just offered it to Nature Boy. Nature Boy was like, "Oh no, thank you," and then Cena just gave it to him. Flair said thank you, held the belt up and left, and there was very little mention of this on commentary.
I think it was pretty much on the fly. I think it was Cena being Cena.
You don't think? So you think he's going to come out with two championships next week? I thought this was them getting rid of the second belt.
You're kidding me.
I don't know why else you would do that on the television show.
I think Cena just did it because he was with Ric Flair, and he was like, actually, wait, this could be kind of funny. Flair's reaction to seemed too authentic.
Yeah, but the fact that he kept it and didn't hand it back to him was like he knew.
I think he went to hand it back, and Cena literally shouts, "Keep it," and ran down to the ring.
Okay, well, we'll see.
Oh, that's really... I can't believe you think that.
Yeah,
and if you're right, I'll be
stunned.
Tell us about the main event then, and we can forget about Raw forever.
3-on-2, Orton, Kane, and Rollins against Cena and Reigns. I am so done with Raw main events at the moment. The 10 minutes until the top of the hour, 3 hours into Raw, is the least interesting part of Raw because the matches are always, unless it's a singles match, they're usually very bleh, and you know you're probably not getting a finish.
Mm-hmm.
And especially like in this, I don't really have any interest in this feud at all.
What's the crack with Seth Rollins and the way he got written out of the match? That was another... This show had shitloads of weird things that they don't usually do.
How was he written out of the match?
Okay, so we went over the top...
Oh yeah, his knee.
Go ahead. Yeah,
he tweaked his knee and just left. And
why do you write Dean Ambrose out of storyline? If you're going to write Seth, if you have to eventually write Seth out of the main event in order to do the finish they did.
I'll tell you why. Because they have a room with 16 writers in it and they all have to come up with ideas to justify their jobs.
Could the two of them have not done something to get, to even with the four?
I think somebody probably came up with the idea of, we'll do this with Ambrose, and then somebody else was like, well, what are we going to do about Rollins? And because we don't want him cashing in at the end of the night when Cena's laid out. And
okay, well, the finish was a DQ anyway.
Yeah, a DQ finish, and they all hit a finisher with Reigns being the last one, because Reigns has to stand tall at the end of every show.
Well, Reigns speared Cena, by mistake.
Yeah, he did, yeah, that's true.
So that was the first thing, is the first time they had them touch each other, but they made it like it was by mistake. You had Kane holding up Reigns, and Randy ducking out of the way. Kane holding up Cena, Randy ducking out of the way from a spear, and Cena eating it. And then eventually, as Ken said, after a few more finishers, Reigns stood tall after a spear over Orton, was it? One of the two heels.
I think it was Orton. Yeah, it was Orton.
That was Monday Night Raw. So obviously next week we won't be reviewing anything past because we'll be talking about the pay-per-view. Are you looking forward to the pay-per-view?
Yeah, I always look forward to the pay-per-views. I'm a pro wrestling fan. I just don't like this garbage they make me watch on Monday nights.
Did you know the pay-per-view is available on the network?
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't. What's a pay-per-view?
I don't know, but it's on the network.
They've eliminated that term, ladies and gentlemen.
No, I think they've kept it.
No, they had it barred from the tonight's show.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because I was thinking it was very strange how they were saying it so much.
They got rid of it a while ago, they brought it back, and now they've gotten rid of it again.
I thought they were using it very heavily the last few weeks. I suppose if they didn't use it. Okay, let's do a podcast roundup.
Yeah, the most interesting thing I think of this week was Kurt Angle and Jim Ross's podcast, The Ross Report.
Okay, we can start with that if you like.
My friend Kurt. Kurt
actually did sound pretty...
How are you doing these days? How are you feeling?
He sounded pretty lucid.
Yeah, no, he sounds well. I mean, I would like to believe... I'm naive, so I'd like to believe that Kurt's clean and has been since September, October of last year.
Mm-hmm. So he says.
Yeah, I mean, this was basically just his chance to kind of pitch himself to WWE. He mentioned he'd been offered a TNA contract. His current one expires on September 18th.
September, yeah.
I feel like maybe they've signed him to an extension because they seem to be building a match with him and Joe on the TV.
Oh, yeah, because that... Oh, look, come on. I don't think you can read into that. I don't. Like, there's been several times where people have been heavily featured in storylines and just vanished.
That's true, but I feel like maybe they're working towards something. But, yeah, because they're doing every week they're doing these videos called My Comeback, showing Kurt's rehab, and I feel like they certainly feel like something might be placed.
They're trying to flatter him.
Don't forget that this interview with Kurt is about 6 weeks in the can. Ross had mentioned
that's
a while ago.
right. That's
so
right.
I think that they may have come to something because they've since brought him back to TV and started these
as in the authority.
Anyway, he mentioned he put over that he was feeling as healthy as he ever had, that he was as clean as he's ever been, and without saying so, said he wanted to have. So he said this was going to be my final contract. He also mentioned he wanted to go out on the biggest stage possible. So I think he wants to get back in. I think any of us wrestling fans would want to see him have one more run, would want to see him have a final match at WrestleMania, would want to see him work with Daniel Bryan, with Dean Ambrose, with Waylon Mercy, with all these guys. And it's just a matter of whether or not they're interested, whether or not he can pass the medical. I think they seem to be in the mood to make up with people. And if Kurt is clean and he sits down with Vince, he can get a meeting with Vince and Hunter, maybe it's possible. But I don't think he can pass the medical. I feel like...
Yeah.
You know, I know that there was the story Dana White told a couple of years ago about Kurt failing his medical for the Ultimate Fighter. Yeah. Kurt tells that story differently, but in the court of public opinion, Dana's usually a more truthful person than Kurt.
Certainly more so than Kurt.
It's the big thing is his neck. He says he has had no problems for years. You also hear the stories about him in the locker room being unable to lace up his boots without being in intense pain, bending over.
Yeah, it's a weird one, man. Like, it's just, they're very open to... Everybody says, never say never in wrestling, because Vince is very open, and Hunter more so, because Hunter's getting these deals done incredibly quick, like Sammartino, like Warrior, like the Jericho rolling over contract, like RVD. It seems it's more easy than ever to come back in, especially on a limited schedule. It was just Lesnar for a while, and now it's a lot more than just Lesnar. But the way in which they released Kurt and the reasons for which they have, and what Kurt has done in the public eye since.
Yeah.
But you're right, the medical is the big issue. But I'm sure if he does enough to convince them, he'll get a meeting. And
if he can get a meeting, I think he can come in.
A meeting's not going to pass him a medical.
Well, no, that's true. If he gets a meeting, I think he can get an offer.
He can be a talking head on the DVD all he wants. I don't know if we'll see him in WWE ring, and I'd love to. Also had a podcast with Dreamer.
Sorry, the one thing we need to discuss as well, and this is mentioned elsewhere, I mean, he's on very good terms with Jeff Jarrett, who will be looking for someone to build his promotion around in 3 months or so, whenever that gets off.
Yeah, he didn't specifically actually bring up the idea of that being a third option on the podcast, but of course it is. That's very interesting.
Yeah, so other news and podcasts this weekend.
Austin and Dreamer had like a podcast where they were talking about, it was part one of a two-parter. Obviously they were stuck in a hotel room very closely together, and the weird thing about this is Dreamer was talking an awful lot about orgies and like
kind of uncomfortable. Yeah,
I felt uncomfortable, so I don't know how Austin feels like, because I think Dreamer comes off as such a
sleazeball.
Not a sleazeball, but like Austin is a star, and I think Dreamer it might come off like doesn't carry himself as a star. It's a very awkward conversation, I felt at times. I thought
that the most interesting thing about this was the... I've heard bits of his story about the investors he had for ECW in 2001.
Oh, this was fascinating.
He claimed he had people willing to put in $110 million to ECW in 2001 that Paul Heyman told him he would meet with, and basically never showed up. Now, certainly you can believe the story that Heyman didn't show up, and I believe that Heyman at a certain point gave up, and when they couldn't get the USA Network deal in 2001, when the WWF had left the USA and they wanted that spot, and it got all the way to the top, and Bonnie Hammer said, if we're going to have wrestling, we're going to have the number one wrestling, we're not going to have wrestling at all, and that's what killed ECW. But yeah, they had Fox Sports Ohio, I think, were willing to take them, and Dreamer says he had investors, and Paul just refused to meet with them. I'd love to know how much that story is true. It's
an amazing story, and it is actually a highlight, and what we'll do perhaps is we'll timestamp that on the Austin podcast, and maybe we can write in the description where to listen for that. 'Cause I actually forgot about that. That was fascinating. Yeah, like Dreamer is kind of saying he's been in a position where he had to turn down a terrific amount of money for the sake of VCW. But Jericho and Christian was on Jericho's podcast. It was very, very good. Christian seems very laid back kind of guy. Came off quite nice, not super charismatic, but it was a nice show. And he says he has a lot more gas left in the tank. There's no real revelations on the show though. But Christian, for me, I've said it before and I'll say it again. He is the best candidate right now on the roster to become an agent. And he'll probably be the best agent they have, I think, because Christian just knows how to put matches together.
To me, he's like. This is why I was very disappointed in 2010 when the ECW brand died. It was my favourite show at the time because I just like my simple little wrestling show, and he was having great matches on there, and so was Goldust. And now they're on the main roster and they just get lost. And I think he could have 4 or 5 years of being in the ring with guys and getting them better and making them look better than they are.
He might yet. You just would worry though. It's been a rocky year. It's been rocky 2 years.
He's been more injured than in the ring the last 3 years.
Colt Cabana had Mason Ryan on. I didn't listen to it, but what I wanted to ask you is, are you as excited as I am about the potential Welsh Dragons tag team of Mason Ryan and Rob Terry at some stage in the future?
Oh, absolutely.
I just want to see them beside each other for a comparison. And finally on the podcast front, the original Orange Man, Taz, has been scared away from the podcast world. He says that I didn't
understand this. What was his point?
Well, his point was that basically it's an overpopulated market, and he decided to take a break. So
did he have a podcast?
He did, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
Well, Ken. In reality, he clearly knew we did because it was the week we started. We pushed him out.
Yeah,
we pushed Taz out, and I'm happy with it because he was
taking up a lot of room.
He's taking up a lot of room.
Wink, wink.
More than he probably ever has before. Okay, guys, let's go to part 2 of the Great American Bash. Ken, you're gonna pretty much run the show on this one, and I'll just give you my tab. Do you want me to reveal my secret?
Your secret?
Actually, I know where I'm going to do.
You had a secret, Neil. Go on.
Oh, the secret about this show that I never told you.
Okay, go on.
I had seen it before. I have it on VHS.
You have it on VHS?
But do you know? Have you ever heard about
some?
No, had you ever heard some things about these early 90s WCW VHSs? They had issues with them. Shit amount of things were cut.
Oh yeah, they were 2 hours long, most of them.
Yeah, so there was so much here I didn't see. But we were last focused on Vladimir in the crowd as the Yellow Dog and Johnny B. Bad had made their entrances.
Okay, so
this had the weakest lockups of all time. Did you notice this?
The
worst I've ever seen.
Was very green at the time. I think did we discuss this much? I don't know.
No, we didn't know.
Brian had hit a crossbody block and had him pinned when Teddy Long got involved for the DQ. After the match, Johnny Bad sucker punched Pillman. This was the point where we went backstage for the interview with Missy Hyatt, and Bischoff is outside her locker room door. We can hear a shower running, and he's like, I wonder what's going on in here. So he wanders inside and then starts walking toward the shower, and then basically tries to interview Missy in the shower. She starts screaming, and Bischoff runs off. I was just like, what is this? You know what I mean?
This is on the same show that Arn Anderson had threatened to do terrible things to Missy as well in an interview with Bischoff.
Yes.
So Bischoff had clearly gotten aroused at this idea and said, I'm going to beat Arn to the punch here, and I'm going to accost Missy Hyatt in her dressing room with a camera.
Yes. So that was great.
Bischoff looked amazing, didn't he?
He did, didn't he?
He was incredible.
I would have given him the company as well, you know. He just had the archetypal, the 90s.
I think he was better than most. I actually think he was just like, it was an insane looking head he had.
Yeah, no, but what I was going to say was he had that look of a slick 90s businessman, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
If you see one of those films about what's that great 90s film based on Wall Street?
Jerry Maguire.
No. Maybe I'm thinking late 80s. The one Michael Douglas and Charlie Sheen. Is it called Wall Street?
It is, isn't it?
Money Never Sleeps?
Yeah.
The Money Never Sleeps is the newer one. Anyway,
yes,
he looked like a stockbroker from Wall Street in the late 80s here, and I would trust him with my money. You know what I mean?
I would.
Next up,
Ted Turner, however, made the wrong choice.
Well, for a few months there, he had the most profitable wrestling company in the world. Didn't
of all times, yeah, he did.
Next up was Big Josh, who would later be Matt Bourne, Doink,
yeah.
Who looked totally different. He looked bigger than I remember thinking Doink was.
That's when you put a big on. Wait, if they just called him Langston rather than when they chopped it down, If they called him Langston instead of Big E, he'd probably look the size of Kofi to you.
Do you think so?
That's how much the word can mean on top of the name.
He beat Black Blood,
who was fucking lunatic Billy Jack Hayes.
Yeah, with a hood on, and I always love these.
Can we please review the Billy Jack Hayes shoot interview one?
I didn't know there was one, but yeah.
You haven't heard about this? No. He's the most conspiracy theories in the history of pro wrestling about why his downfall was the way it was. He thinks the world was against him.
I see.
He's a lunatic. I highly recommend we watch them.
So this was a lumberjack match, and it went about 5.5 minutes.
Lumberjacks were everybody who had already appeared on the show except for JYD and Dick, the Dicks.
Dick the Dicks.
Dick Murdoch and Dick Slater.
Yeah. So Blood was about to had a gigantic axe which he was going to.
Oh yeah. Can I talk about this for a sec? Everybody, when people talk about like the cartoony nonsense of the early 90s, first of all, it's WWE to get the flack, and it's Berserker trying to stab Taker in the ring with his sword. But this was preceded by this. This happened before that, I believe. And it's fucking, he tries to kill him with an axe.
Yeah, he does. He tries to stab it with a giant axe.
Like an actual axe, like a golden axe. He tries to chop the man's head off while he's lying down.
And appropriately enough, Big Josh then gets his own axe handle that he brings to the ring. He brings to the ring like a piece of wood, which you're told is an axe handle. I don't know why he doesn't just have an axe. But anyway, he hits Blackblood with the... Blackwell.
Blackwell.
For me to say. He hits the dude with the hood on and gets the pinfall. Next was the match of the night. Now, at this point, I need to talk about something to you, Neil, that
this moment here.
What?
I need to talk about Jenkins' entrance, if that's
okay. We can in a second, right? I want to discuss something we're going to do on our reviews going forward that I haven't told you about yet. Okay.
Good.
So we're going to have three things we have to pick from each review, and maybe at the end of this review we can go through and look at this. Okay. There's going to be match of the night, okay, which is straightforward enough, just whatever your favourite match was.
Yeah.
Okay. There's going to be moment of the night, which is, it could be, the end of a match, it could be a promo, it could be something you found particularly funny, whatever your favourite moment of the show is, the finish of a match kind of thing.
Okay.
And then we're going to have and let me see if I can get this right, 10,000 car crashes and 7 matches. Botch of the night. Which, as Neil will remember, and hopefully all of you, is named after a Roddy Piper promo from Madison Square Garden
with Vince,
where he was supposed to say that he had 10,000 matches and 7 car crashes, but he said it in reverse. So the 10,000 car crashes and 7 matches botch of the night. Okay.
Okay.
So anyway, I don't
want to do it in this review. I'm going to look out for these.
Fine.
Thank you.
But yeah. So for me, this was this may have been this was the moment of the night. I think for me it was. El Gigante, Neil calls him Giant Gonzalez, but he worked longer as El Gigante, so that's what I'm calling him. Against One Man Gang, the same One Man Gang.
This is post Akeem, One Man Gang.
Guess what age he was here?
I'd say he was 40.
He's 31.
Fuck!
He was young, dude.
So
I was watching him thinking this dude was like 50.
Hold on. Akeem was younger than you are now doing Akeem.
Yeah.
Get out of here!
Will you stop?
That's incredible.
So, Gigante comes out with a gaggle of midgets.
I need to talk. This is what I need to talk about. When I realised that I'd had this on VHS, I watched it a few years ago, and with most things over time, your mind warps. And I was sitting there watching it with Claire. Now, this was one of the matches, of course, that got actually featured on the VHS.
Okay.
So, when this was coming up, I said to Claire, "You need to watch Giant Gonzalez's entrance." Now, what happened was Gonzalez walked out with 4 midgets, one of them on his shoulder, but my mind over time had remembered it in a way that all 4 midgets were on his shoulder.
Okay.
Right? And I
like the Andre the Giant picture.
Yeah, with the women, right?
Yeah.
And I had this vision of it, and it's a vision that has horrified me. So when I saw that he was only coming out with one on his shoulder, it was actually a very it was very sobering, and I was very happy to see that it was only one. Kevin Sullivan did a promo with One Man Gang as well before at his eyes.
Okay.
That was horrific. For those of you out there who'll get this reference, Giant Gonzalez and the Midgets looks like a scene out of El Topo. I'll leave it there.
Okay.
Going back to Jay Warren's incredible commentary, at one point he says, One Man Gang maybe 6'10". Now, Let's pretend John Gonzalez isn't 6'4" or 7'4", which he legitimately is.
I thought he was only 7.
He's 7'4". He was built up to be 7'7". So he's 7'4". They call him 7'4" or 5", I believe. So they weren't exaggerating too much about Gonzalez, but calling One Man Gang 6'10" was just
that was a stretch. Pardon one.
Yeah, some of the things that he was. This was fantastic. Speaking of the commentary, Tony Schiavone.
Yeah,
right?
he was legitimately 7'4".
He was, yeah. Tony Schiavone says that it shows great instincts that Elegante tries to get back to his feet while on the ground.
Yes! He starts talking about the improvement of El Gigante's wrestling skills as these two just have this dreadful brawl. So the finish is...
Can I do this, please? I have it here. The finish here, Elegante... The 7'4" babyface won by cheating and a clothesline to the shoulder blade.
Yeah, no, what it was I think Gang had some mysterious pro wrestling powder trademark and was going to use it on Gigante. Gigante kicked it in Gang's face. It was one of those where it was really obvious it took too long to do, and then he got a really awful looking clothesline
to his shoulder blade.
Needs to be discussed about the 90s is how often there'll be an interference fin. There'll be either a distraction or like a powder in the eyes or something like that, and then they go to the finish. But the move is always a clothesline. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so frequent. They just do these weak-looking clotheslines. It's like, what?
Well, they feel that maybe to compensate for whatever was the distraction, they could get away with something less than a finisher.
But it's just bad.
This certainly was.
Next up is the... I don't know if you could call it the main event. We got Sting. Call it Sting, yeah.
They show a video recap for this, and which they didn't show for the huge tag team breakup that they would have had hours of footage of.
Did they show the angle with Sting and the Sting lookalike here? No, I can't remember if that's the clash before or after.
No, the angle they show is like a tag match between
Steiners and Sting saves Luger.
Yeah, and they also show Sting with a kid. And Sting has the kid on his shoulder, who happens to have the exact same face paint as Sting.
That's it, yeah.
Which is kind of incredible considering that was like Sting changed.
They had a fake Sting lookalike contest. The kid is actually Kevin Sullivan's son.
Okay.
And his mom is front row ringside. His mom, incidentally, is not Nancy Sullivan, but it was his legitimate mom. So Kevin Sullivan apparently was married before, and so this is your 6 degrees of Chris Benoit for the week.
Okay.
But So they're having an angle, and Sting comes out to meet this lucky youngster who's won the Sting lookalike contest, wearing the pink Sting face paint.
Yeah.
And then Koloff comes out and attacks Sting, then threatens to attack the kid, and Jim Ross is just awesome in the background, kind of looking like, leave him alone, you know. And the mother jumps over to protect her son. Brilliant stuff. So these two had a chain match, which is basically a strap match.
Yeah. Koloff had never lost one of these before.
Yes. Oh, they called it a Russian chain match, didn't they?
Yeah.
So both guys do the whole touch the three corners thing, and then they kind of have a brawl, and Koloff falls and leaps and hits the pad and wins the match.
Match of the night, is it?
Probably. It's slim pickings on this particular show.
Sting was in an incredible shape, but not to the point that Warrior was in WWE.
No, he was in incredible shape. It looked like he could be natural if you were kidding yourself, you know.
Well, he could move around very well.
Yes, he could.
Which he always had over Warrior anyway. But it's just amazing to look at the two of them after all the documentaries you saw with them starting off.
Yeah, you know, Sting looked the exact same size as Warrior at one point. Well, almost, yeah. But then Warrior kind of hung in around in that ballpark where Sting got substantially smaller.
Yes,
which is a good thing. He didn't need to be any bigger than this. Speaking of muscle heads, the next match was the main event. So this was just after Ric Flair had a contract dispute with World Championship Wrestling. The nature of this was Flair was on a contract for $750,000 per year. Mm-hmm. His contract was due the following summer, not till the middle of 1992.
Yes.
They offered him $350,000 a year, which was a more than 50% pay cut, with the idea that the company wasn't going to be built around him. He was not happy with this. At the time, Luger and Sting were both earning in the $600,000 a year range. She was read as observers recently. So Flair basically said no, and they got into an argument about it, and they wanted Flair to put Luger over for the championship, but however he'd already told Barry Windham he was putting him over for it. Sure. So they fired him and they cut him, and it was only about 10 days out, they presented this on television as it was, so they said that there was a contract dispute and Ric Flair has been released by WCW, but everyone thought it was a pro wrestling angle. People still thought he was probably going to be in the show in some form or fashion, but he wasn't. So going into this match, Wyndham was technically the heel and Luger was technically the babyface. Both have very tepid reactions.
Yeah.
The first thing, to kind of synopsize this show, on the way out, they both have on-screen graphics, and Barry Windham is Barry Windam.
Ken sent me a WhatsApp screenshot of that when you were watching it a few weeks back, and it's WCW.
Yeah, it really is. So, I'd always heard for years about the deafening "We Want Flair" chants.
They're certainly not deafening.
They're not. Now, I did also read in the Observer that they were turning down the house mics when there were "We Want Flair" chants, but it wasn't like the whole match was ruined by any means.
No. It's kind of gained its own myth.
Yes. So they had this kind of fine match, 2.5 stars, whatever you want to give it, and then the finish was just so strange.
I always. I remember. This was, it's Race, Harley Race, and Mr. fucking Hughes.
So let me tell you what the finish was in their heads, okay?
Sure.
Was that Mr. Hughes and Harley Race are going to come out. I cannot think of two more ineffective managers in pro wrestling history, but anyway, we're going to come out. And remember, Wyndham is the heel going in, and Luger is the babyface. The idea is that we're going to have a double turn with Wyndham being distracted and Luger, quote-unquote, cheating to win, okay? And so that at the end of the match, we would come out with Luger as this hot heel and Wyndham as this screwed-over babyface. A bit like maybe Mick Foley in the Rock at Survivor Series in 1998.
Yeah.
What actually happened was... Oh, by the way, the cage here was a story. The cage was no taller than the octagon. It was tiny.
Yeah, very small.
Okay, so Hughes comes out and goes from one side of the ring, kind of distracts the referee. I don't know why. Race comes over to the other side of the ring, and I swear to God, he looks at Luger and says, do I have the exact quote? He tells Luger to do it. That's what he says. He says, do it, okay? At which point Luger turns around, grabs Wyndham and hits a pile driver on Wyndham and gets the pin.
No, pile drivers were legal or something, were they?
No, they were legal.
Grand. So do it was win the match.
He said, win the match, Lex. And Lex did, okay? He gets handed a championship belt that isn't the WWE World Heavyweight Championship.
That's right, because they didn't have it.
They didn't have one.
Flair still had it.
I believe it's an old television championship
belt.
That
was right, yeah.
And Luger then leaves with Mr. Hughes, who I never really understood his purpose.
Oh, and ever, yeah.
I've watched the next...
He was around till 98, 99.
But I've watched the next 6 months of television, and he's still there, and he's not even used as a heater. He's not like out there interfering much or anything. Harley Race, I always thought, for who he was as a wrestler, he was so useless as a manager.
I think he was good with Vader.
I just thought his promos were awful. I thought, I just thought he was useless. Maybe he's only getting
into it at the time, but I had no great shakes in 91.
So this was just, and then they cut away from it very, very quickly. And this is just a very, very, very underwhelming World Heavyweight title match, made even more perplexing by what comes next. So
what do you call this if that was the main event? Because there is another match, another steel cage match.
So they'd advertised Paulie Dangerously and Arn Anderson with his blonde highlights.
Yes.
Against Rick Steiner, whose brother was out injured at the stage, and Missy Hyatt, okay? Now, they were in Baltimore, which had a very strict regulation, you won't know this, Neil, that they did not allow man-on-woman confrontations.
So that's why Missy gets taken out early.
So let me first of all talk about Paulie's outfit here. He's
beautiful.
Pink leggings with white and pink tie-dye shorts over them, a black jacket with green and orange trim, and of course he has the old school mobile phone for heat. And I thought it was really interesting that on this show, the two managers with the heaters, their gimmicks were Paulie and his phone, and Terry and her laptop computer. It's just like technology is heat in 1991.
Well, of course it is, because they were very...
Well, where's somebody coming out with an iPad these days?
No, it's because
Google Glass.
The southern fans might have been able to afford that. They can afford their ticket to the wrestling, but they might be able to get this high-tech.
By the way, tickets to this show were $10 each.
Yeah, I know. Well, this was before they bumped up in 94.
It was.
So, but listen, I still think Paul Heyman looked far better than either member of the Rock and Roll Express in that gear.
I would completely agree there. But so the hardliners, who were Dick Slater and Dick Murdoch, the Dicks as you call them, come out. They're dressed like a moving crew.
They are, yeah.
and they kidnap Missy Hyatt, okay? They take her away, presumably to rape her, I don't know.
They're dressed exactly like Tenacious D were in the Foo Fighters Learning to Fly video.
Yes, they are. Actually,
like, it's literally, maybe that's where they got it from.
Best of all here, I hope you spotted this as well. A fan gets involved.
Dick Murdoch almost kills him.
Yeah, he does, yeah. But Murdoch, in the process of punching him, lets Missy fall, and she takes a bad bump on her head and was hurt.
Oh, that's brilliant.
There you go.
No, it's not brilliant, but
So here's the thing. As Missy's being dragged off to a certain doom, Jim Ross just moves on to the match. No concern. So I just assumed Missy was raped and killed until I saw her at the Clash of the Champions 3 months later.
Not to be laughed at, Nick.
But incidentally, she was seen again, but her face and her looks never were.
Oh my god.
So then the finish, this match lasts
6 minutes.
2 minutes and 8 seconds.
It felt like 6 though.
2 minutes and 8 seconds, and
everyone's horrible.
Rick laid Earn out with a clothesline and then hit Polly with a clothesline and pinned him in 2 minutes. And I have no idea why this was the main event.
Why?
Other than maybe they wanted a babyface to win. I can't really.
Maybe it was a situation where after they put the cage down, they couldn't get it back up. So the cage
that
matches
was it.
had to
It took
be
a long time
okay.
to assemble it. But why didn't they just put this match before the main event, before the world title match?
Yeah. Why did they have two cage matches?
Why were all the match in a cage? There was originally a cage match scheduled with Luger and Flair. That's what they wanted to do.
Why was any match in a cage?
What?
Your question is why was any match?
So why was Wyndham and Luger in a cage? This was in the age when the cage was supposed to stop people interfering or whatever, but there was just no.
Everybody talks about that these days, but here we are in 1991, and literally both cage matches had like chicanery.
Yes, they did. Yeah. Well, chicanery. I don't know. Anyway, this was just a really, really horrendous close to the show. I thought the show, for what it was, I found plenty of entertainment within it.
Yeah, but not for the intended reasons.
It's funny because WCW did make an in-ring comeback later on that year with Steamboat and Rude returned within 2 weeks of each other.
Yeah, that helped.
Steve Austin starts coming to the fore, winning the television championship.
Pillman.
Luger has good matches on top.
Yeah, Pillman is good.
I've seen a few more. Pillman wins the. Pillman's reign is actually extraordinarily underwhelming until they bring in Liger. He had some bad matches.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, Richard Morton has a match with Pillman, and it's suffered the same way as this would. So whatever it is about him as a heel, he just can't do it.
No, of course he can't. It makes no sense. And you don't need to be back in the day to know that.
I want to do an out of 5 rating for these shows as well.
Okay, great.
So what are we going for this?
Great American Bash 91, in my opinion, would get
8 entertainment value.
For entertainment value,
yeah.
I would give it a 2.5 out of 5.
Because that's what our listeners. If we're going to tell them if it's worth going back and watching.
I'd say if you have that amount of time and you have a few guys over and you want to have a laugh,
and
please go out of your way to watch it.
If you don't have to watch every single second because you're doing a review of it on a podcast, you can skip maybe the 10 minutes of the 17 that Morton and Gibson had.
I would like to say though, if you're coming home after a hard day's work, you're not looking forward to tomorrow and it's raining outside and you happen to be in the second story of your house, don't watch this.
Okay.
You'll be out that window.
Okay.
Out of it. Okay, everybody, thank you so much.
3.5 stars from me.
Okay, 3.5 stars from Ken. I think that's very generous. But then again, Ken, it's nice to have a different opinion.
It is very true. Can I say one thing to the people before we wrap it up?
Of course.
Keep an eye on our website, which is Neil.
It's at www.thisaintfake.com.
Keep an eye on our website this week. We will be putting up a Facebook and Twitter, hopefully within the next 7 days. We're going to try and be active on there, and we're also going to try and get the podcast up on iTunes for those and YouTube for those of you who want other and easier ways to access it.
Absolutely.
And as always, when we do have the Facebook and Twitter up, any feedback, any requests, anything at all.
Yeah, and we really do appreciate the feedback, of course, again, that we got for the first episode. Thank you, everybody who's listened to the second. Myself and Ken are UFC bound next, and we'll be back on the FM airways, 103.2 Dublin City FM to be specific. On Sunday at 4 o'clock, we'll be doing a 20-minute supplementary show, fallout from the UFC Fight Night, McGregor versus Brandao, and then we'll be back for episode 3 of This Ain't Fake, which should be up on Wednesday next week or so.
Yeah, I think the plan we discussed going forward will be to have the MMA show for you guys on Monday and to have the pro wrestling show on Wednesday.
Exactly. So until Sunday, or if you're just a pro wrestling fan, this time next week, thank you very much for listening. I've been Neil Marshall, Ken has been Ken, and this has been This Ain't Fake, brother.